Hi, and welcome to Lisa's Stamp Studio. My name is Lisa Curcio, and this is a YouTube live event. Whether you're here watching the replay or you're with me live, I'm so glad that you've come by. I'm going to teach you a snow technique tonight, and it is really easy. Chances are you already have what you need to create this technique at home. Now, I just want to go over a couple housekeeping things with you. First of all, make sure you hang with me tonight till the end of the video because I have four more projects that I'm going to be sharing with you using the exact same products that I'm going to be using to create tonight's card. In addition to that, I want to take a minute just to remind you that if you would like to chat during tonight's live, that you will need to sign into your YouTube account. That is your Gmail address. For those of you that are watching the replay, if you sign in as well, you'll be able to follow along with the live chat off to the side if you're on a desktop version. I also want to take the opportunity to introduce you to my YouTube virtual assistant. That is Megan. Megan's name appears in blue off to the side during the live chat. And she's here to interact with you and answer questions that I probably will miss because my head's going to be down at the stamp table busy stamping because that's what you came here to do. All right, so what do you say we get started? All right, let me turn the camera down. Let me just get you guys all zoomed in. And then we can get started and make sure that you're nice and straight because there's nothing worse than a crooked camera, right? All right, I'm going to be starting with a piece of cherry cobbler cardstock. I'm going to put all the cutting dimensions down in the video description below once we are all finished with tonight's live. You're going to have to give me a few minutes and I'll come back in and I'll put that link down there for you so that you don't have to try to remember what size that was if I happen to mention it. I know that sometimes can be distracting. Let me just zoom you in a little bit closer. And for those of you just joining us, I just want to remind you to hang with me to the end of tonight's live because I've got several other samples to share with you using this exact same products that I'm going to be using tonight. All right, well, when I was creating this card, I decided I needed a little bit of a background, and everything that I tried did not work well for me. So my go-to thing is to use a large greeting from the same stamp set that I'm using for the focus of my card. And tonight I'm using Perfectly Plaid. The great thing about this stamp set is there is a coordinating pine tree punch that punches out these images. And although that's very intuitive when you have a punch, I wanted to create a card for you using this image. You're going to notice that this tree is slightly smaller than this, and it has more of a realistic look to it. I found that it doesn't fit into the punch just perfectly, but boy, does it make gorgeous, realistic trees. So I'm going to be using that on tonight's cards. And like I said, I've got more samples for you at the end, so make sure you hang with me. All right, so I've pulled out the Merry Christmas, and I'm going to be using early espresso ink to create that background on here. And I know you're probably thinking, ew, but wait, it's going to work really well when we're all finished. So I'm going to go ahead and open that up, and I'm going to make sure I'm inside your camera view. I'm going to go ahead and ink this up. Now, I don't want my images too close together, so I'm going to kind of spread them out. I'm going to start here at the top, and I'm going to work left to right because I find that that works really well for me, stamping in the same way that I would read. And I'm going to skip down here and then kind of fill this in. So you're going to see I'm kind of jumping around a little bit. I'm also careful to make sure that my images are not exactly lined up. So I want a little bit of a separation between them. And I want to make sure that the greeting is not exactly symmetrical from the top to the bottom. That's just a Lisa thing. All right, so there we go. That's good enough. A tip for you, since I'm using my large grid paper, is to stamp off all your excess ink on your scratch paper. That's going to help reduce your trips to rinse out your Stamp and Scrub or your Stamp and Chamois when you go to clean your stamps. Please clean your stamps after you're done using them. That's a really important tip. I have a lot of people who tell me that they don't even bother to do that. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that's me. I like to clean them so that next time I pull them out, I put them in a different color. I'm good to go. All right, so now we have the background here. I'm going to set this off to the side for just a second. And the next thing I'm going to do is bring in a piece of crumb cake cardstock. And I'm going to be creating a tag out of this. And the easiest way to do that is to use this delightful tag topper punch. Now, there's several of these in the catalog, which you can find over at lisastampstudio.com. But I like this one because it's really reminiscent of an all occasion card. It's not too fancy. There's tracks here that you line up the paper in. I don't know if you can see this or not on camera, but there's a 1 inch, a 1.5, and a 2 inch. So you can vary the width of your tag. So I'm going to slide this right up the track. and I'm going to make sure it's in as far as it can go. And I'm going to use the heel of my hand, and then I'm going to punch. And look that. It creates that beautiful tag topper for you, and it even gives you the hole, so you don't have to do any extra work. I think punches are like the best thing since sliced bread, in my opinion. All right, so I've got these two pieces here. I'm going to work on these almost simultaneously, but I'm going to start on this one first. I'm going to tell you when I'm creating the snow effect that you're going to need to make sure that your work surface is amply covered, because boy, did I learn the hard way. I'm also going to move you in a little bit closer because I want you to be able to see some detail. Let me move that down for you. Now, I have done a ton of experimenting, excuse me, and I want to share those tips with you. I am going to be using a white craft ink pad. Now, this is a pigment ink. And if you're like me, you don't want your pigment inks too juicy, especially if you're going to be stamping with them. And of course, either heat embossing or heat setting them. So typically, I would use this technique with a clear stamping block, which means I would dip it in the ink pad. But since this ink pad is not really juicy, I did not find that that worked really well. So I'm going to improvise. Now, I am going to tell you that this technique I'm going to share with you tonight works well on any color ink that you want to use to create a really pretty effect. Keep in mind, though, that if it's a dye-based ink, like the one we just used here with the early espresso, you can take your block and just lightly tap it in here to pick up some color to do the exact same thing I'm going to do here tonight. So keep in mind, you can use other colors to get this technique. The technique for the snow effect is going to look best with white ink. And so I've got the craft ink refill for that white ink pad right here. And I'm going to add a drop of that here to the clear block. Now, this ink is a different consistency than regular craft ink. I might add a little bit more because I want to make sure I have enough. There we go. And you're going to want to make sure you keep those nice and tightly covered. And you're going to see here that it probably looks really thick compared to your dye-based inks. And that's exactly what we need. The next thing I'm going to be using is my aqua painter. Now, you might be looking at this going, there's no water in there. That's absolutely correct. I actually bought several sets of aqua painters. This one I leave completely empty of tap water for a very good reason. Because I know I'm going to be using it in craft ink, to be able to squeeze water through the bristles is really not very conducive to this technique because it would actually drain the whole barrel. So I have a little tiny plastic cup here, nothing fancy, with tap water in it. And that's how I'm going to clean my brush. And I'll talk you through that. I'm also going to use that water, I think you can see it right off camera here, to help me thin out this color. So I'm going to add a little water to my brush, and then I'm going to take this and I'm going to water it down. It kind of looks like paste, doesn't it? But that's what we want, is we want to get this thin enough, and I'm going to move this up and out of the way, so that I'm going to be able to create an effect with this. Now, once I've got it kind of runny, you can see that I've got that here. I'm going to add a little bit more water. Now, if this is your first time doing this, I'm going to recommend that you experiment on a scrap piece of cardstock just till you get the hang of it. Now, I've done several of these beforehand because it's important that you do it and let it dry before you do any other stamping. Boy, did I learn the hard way. I created a big smeary mess. So go ahead and make sure that's good and thin. I do have a rag nearby, and I'll show you how I'm going to use that in just a few minutes. All right, so here we've got our tag. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this finger as an anchor or a barrel to help tap this. Now watch. So all I'm doing is tapping that really moist ink on top of that tag. Now, depending on how much snow you like or where you live and how flurried it gets, you can determine when you want to stop. Can you completely control the coverage? No, but that's the beauty of a splatter technique. So this does dry fairly quickly, especially if you didn't add too much water to it. So I'm going to kind of carefully pick that up, not to smear it, just to give you a close look. So I'm going to set that aside to dry for right now. And then I'm going to come back over to that stamped greeting. Remember this? All right, I'm going to do the exact same thing here, but I know that maybe that might be a little bit too thick. And I've got a little bit bigger area to cover. So again, tapping against my index finger, I'm going to create that splatter technique. Now, this is a larger area to cover, so I'm being really zealous and really generous with this. And again, you can do as much or as little as you'd like, and I'm good with that. All right. Now, I know you can't see this off camera, but right here on my stamp table, I have actually splattered some of this white ink up above my scratch paper. So you're going to want to make sure that you wipe that off right away while it's still wet, hence the rag. All right. I'm going to scoot this off to the side and let that dry. And here's where my cup of water comes in. I'm going to rinse this. If you were to squeeze the water through the barrel, you will literally empty it to get all that pigmentation out. That is not necessarily true when you're using a dye-based ink, but for these pigment inks, absolutely. And then I have my rag nearby so I can make sure I just gently wipe off those bristles. You never want to compromise these. So make sure you take your finger and you give that a good pinch and bring those bristles together before you recap it. You want to preserve those so that it's always nice and pointy at the tip so you can get in some detailed areas. Now, you might be asking me, well, what are you going to do about this mess? All right, well, this is what my rag is for. I don't want to dirty up my chamois or my Stampin' Scrub, so I'm just going to take that right on top of my little craft rag and wipe that off. It leaves a little bit of a pigment discoloration on here. I don't know if you guys can see it, but it's kind of cloudy. So when I'm all done tonight, I'll take it over to the kitchen sink and a little bit of dish soap, and I'll just wipe that off to make sure that none of that gravitates over to a stamp or another color that I might be using this technique with. All right, so that's a little bit about the technique. Super easy. I know that you can do this at home. Now, while those are drying, let's work on a couple other things. I have a great tip for you tonight using the pine tree punch that's part of this bundle. Now, you might remember that I mentioned a few minutes ago that this punch coordinated with the stamp set, and it does. But boy, have I got a tip for you. I don't know about you, but fussy cutting, I like it, but a lot of people hate it. So I want to help speed things up for you. So I'm using the early espresso ink here. All the images that I'm using with you tonight come from that exact same stamp set. So let me pull these out. Remember, I told you they got splattered off camera, and they did. There's a little bit of white on here. So there's two images here to create a pine cone. There's a solid one that's a little bit shorter, and then there's a full pine cone image. There's also another pine cone image in that stamp set that will add even more detail to this if you choose. A lot of experimenting you can do, lots and lots of fun. So the solid image, I want a little bit lighter so that the other image, which is what I call two-step stamping, is going to create some density. So I'm going to stamp off, and then I'm going to stamp that here. So it's a little bit lighter. I'm going to do the exact same thing now one more time over here. I'm going to leave a little bit of room between them. Again, like I told you before, I like to stamp off all my excess ink before I go and clean my stamp. That helps reduce those trips to rinse that out. Here's that pine cone. And all I'm going to do now is I'm going to gravitate to try to line these up the very best that I can. My head's kind of far away, so I hope you're going to forgive me. So we've got our pine cone, stamping off that excess. All right, this part is finished. I'm going to close up this ink pad since we won't need this. Now, typically, I would cut these out with my scissors, but I had this epiphany. I thought, oh my gosh, will this work? No, I thought maybe it wouldn't. But you know what? I was pleasantly surprised. Let me show you what I did. Let's work here on the center one because I think you can see better. Look right up here at the very top of the punch. Look at that. It almost mimics it perfectly. Now, it doesn't cut the whole thing out, but it certainly reduces my cutting time. So I'm going to go ahead and punch that out. Let me lay that punch off to the side and my scratch paper. Here we go. And then all I did was I took my scissors and I went around this and I just cut away the excess. Now, I like to cut a little bit closer unless I'm going to border this on the exact same color cardstock, which means it would be white on white, because then it's virtually going to be invisible. Now, I do have one that I finished. Actually, I have two I finished right before you joined me. Let me pull those up out of my little cup. Hold on a second. Of course, they're little, and my fingers are cold, so they're not coming out really easy. So there's one and there's two. Now, I know that might be a bit distracting, so let's go ahead and move the grid paper out of the way. And I've got them here on my work surface. We're going to do a little bit more adding to this card that we're going to create. I'm going to bring in my silicone craft sheet right now to do this next step. I'm also going to bring out my Take Your Pick tool. I love this putty attachment, and I like the paper piercing tool attachment because you know what? These are really tiny and they're hard to pick up, but this is sure going to make it a lot easier in just a few minutes. So I'm going to slide those off to the side. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into that tag that we just created. I've got one here that's amply dry, so I'm going to go ahead and use this one. This is the one we just created a few seconds ago, and I want to make sure it's completely dry. I've got a couple wet spots, and I don't want to smear that. So I would say probably a good 5 to 10 minutes, depending on how wet your ink was. You want to make sure, and I cannot stress enough, that this is dry before you move on to these next steps. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add my tree images, and I'm going to use the shaded spruce ink pad for that. And you know what? I'm going to turn this over because I know I'm going to do a little bit of stamping offside the edges. Let me bring that in and I'm just going to flip that over so it's not so distracting. And here's that realistic tree image from that stamp set. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to ink that up. I am not going to put the tree image all the way here near the bottom. I'm going to leave a little bit of room because I'm going to add some more embellishments. So I'm going to ink up my tree and I'm going to stamp that here. Lots of firm, even pressure, and then I'm going to lift. The residual ink that's left on here, do you see how it's lighter? I'm going to use that. So I'm going to move this image up and I'm going to stamp that off to the side. Now I want another lighter tree on this side, but do you notice the line here down the center? Yeah, that's going to show if I stamp that. I've learned that the hard way. So go ahead and ink it up and then stamp off on your scratch paper. And now you're good to go. And I'm going to move that one down a little bit and move it in a little bit. So we've got some interesting background there. Again, I'm going to stamp off that excess here on my scratch paper and then move that out of the way. Okay, I'm done with my ink for right now. And then I'm going to move this because I know it can sometimes be very distracting. And now what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back to this and I'm going to add my embellishments to here. I've cut some designer series papers. The first one is just a strip, and this comes from the coordinating suite of products to the stamp set. I absolutely love this. But I want a banner tip here on the left side. Now, you certainly can do that with your scissors. And for those of you that don't know how to create a good banner tip, I'm going to walk you through it without actually doing it, but I'm going to give you a great cheat mechanism as well. So you would take your scissors and you would make a slit, literally a slit, right in the center of the paper. Then you're going to cut from the outside tip to the top of that slit on both sides, and you're going to have a beautiful banner tip. The secret is to make the slit first. If you don't create that center mark, then it's going to be really difficult to make those tips equal. The deeper you make the slit, the more pointed the banner tip is going to be. But I like to cheat, like I said, and I'm going to use my tailored tag punch. In addition to this great design, look at this. You see this tip right here at the top? Creates the perfect banner tip. I love this punch. So I'm going to go ahead and slide my paper in, and I'm looking to line it up in the center of that designer series paper the very best that I can, and then I'll just squeeze. And look at that. We've got a perfect banner tip, effortless. So let me set that punch aside. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to layer this banner with one more piece. So I'm grabbing another piece here of designer series paper from the exact same series. These papers are double-sided, giving you lots and lots of options. Aren't they pretty? I don't know about you, but you can certainly use that green polka dot all year round. That's the beauty of these papers. They're really conducive to your purchase so that you can use them throughout the year. I'm going to banner these two together, which kind of just layer them up. So I'm going to flip this one over and I'm going to add some adhesive here. So I'm using my snail adhesive, and this is why I like my silicone craft sheet. You can see I came very, very close to the edge. Actually, I actually went off the edge. Adhesive, liquid glue, and hot glue will not stick to this, which is going to keep my work surface nice and clean. So I'm going to move this one up, and I'm just going to kind of angle these towards the center, just showing a little bit layer there. And the next thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to add this to the tag. So you know what I think I'm going to do? I changed my mind. Let's go ahead and let's add this now to another layer of cardstock first. So I've got a piece of Whisper White here that this is going to get layered on. Let me move you out just a little bit so you can see better. And I'm going to flip that over because this one's good and dry. And I am going to add adhesive to my back side. I work generously in my four corners, and I'm a big fan of the silicone craft sheet because I tend to be kind of zealous with my adhesive. Does anyone else do that besides me? I created a very thin border. And again, I'm going to have all these cutting dimensions down in the link of the video description below if you're here visiting from YouTube once we're all done with tonight's live. This is the base of the card. It's crumb cake. I scored it right before you joined me. I'm going to fold this in half. And I'm looking for my bone folder. I like to go over that to give it a nice crisp edge. This is going to get layered on here. I really love that color continuity of bringing all those colors together. Oftentimes I get asked, how many colors can you put into one card? Now, you know, there are exceptions. Obviously, florals and bouquets of balloons, those can be a bunch of colors. But the secret to a really good card, in my opinion, is no more than 3 basic colors. And that doesn't include black or white because I consider those neutrals. All right, so here we've got the base. The next thing we're going to do is we are going to add our tag to this card. And I'm going to use dimensionals. So I'm going to flip that over. And I'm going to take my dimensionals and I'm going to use them very generously. I know that I'm going to be mailing this card specifically. So I want to make sure that the postage machine at the post office doesn't do a real number on this when it goes through the rollers. I'm using that paper piercing tool attachment. That's going to help me take off those paper backings. I love how it wrangles them to make it easier for me to kind of catch them all together too. And then this is gonna go right over here on the right-hand side. Okay, we've got quite a few steps to do yet, but they're all simple. Remember this? Well, this is gonna get anchored here. So I'm gonna add some adhesive here, but I wanna show you something. This tag, remember, is on dimensionals. So there's an elevation difference here. So what hangs off here and here on the banner is going to sag. So we're gonna compensate for that. So I'm gonna flip that over. And with my dimensionals, I'm going to put one on this side and one on this side. And before I take off that paper backing, I'm going to add my adhesive right down the center. And then I am going to take off those backings for those dimensionals. Easier said than done. Some nights it's easier than others, right? Okay, and now this is going to border right underneath this tree. Now, how high or low is up to you, but I want to make sure that this end of my banner is up against that cherry cobbler cardstock. So I've got a little bit of that snow peeking through the bottom that I'll let you play that up. All right, do you remember those pine cones that we created that are here? Let me pull off my dimensional backings. So we've got one of them here, and we've got another one here. All right, we're going to add these to the card, and I'm going to add them here. Now, I'm going to use mini dimensionals for these. I love these. I often wonder what I did before them. Actually, I do know what I did. I used my larger dimensionals and I cut them up and made them smaller, and now I don't have to do that anymore. Isn't that a great thing? So I'm going to put one here. Now, this next one I know is going to overlap a little bit. So I'm going to make sure that I move the dimensional here near the very top so that it won't overlap and hang all crooked. Because remember, there's that elevation difference again. So I'm going to anchor those here like so. All right, one last step. And remember, stay with me. I've got 4 more projects to share with you using this bundle of products. I've got linen thread here. I think I cut about 35, 36 inches. Now, I want to give you a tip. When you buy linen thread, sometimes it's on that paper backing where it has kinks in it. And I don't know about you, but that makes me crazy when I'm trying to tie this pretty bow because then the ends are all kinked. So all you have to do is spritz a little water on your fingers and run it through the linen thread. It doesn't saturate it, but it gets it wet enough that it takes all the kinks out. It worked like a charm, and then it just took under 5 or 10 minutes for it to dry. So I'm taking this and I'm folding the raw ends together. So now I've made it shorter, and I'm going to do that one more time. This is a great tip for you if you like those whimsical, natural looking multi-loop bows. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to make a bow. And I know you're probably thinking, oh, there's a lot of loops, but that's okay because I know this is a raw end and so is this. So I'm going to move that out of the way. And then I'm going to finagle this to make it as even as I can. And when I think I've got it where I want it, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pull those ends tightly. I'm going to do the same thing on this and kind of adjusting those loops. So I'm squeezing this so that I can pull my loose ends so that I don't lose all the tension. Then I'm going to come in with my scissors and I'm going to give this a haircut. I'm going to cut open these loops. And there we go. We've got our bow. Let me move those pieces off to the side. And then I'm going to anchor that with glue dots because that is by far the easiest way to do this. So I've got a glue dot here. I'm going to press the back of that knot right here, press firmly, and then I'll lift and the glue dot will come off with it. Now, if any of the glue dot shows, just kind of pinch it to the back. And that's going to go right in that hole and no one will ever know that you didn't tie it through there, right? Isn't that pretty and so simple? This snow technique can be created on any type of winter card. Really, really pretty. And remember what I said, you can create that splatter technique in any color whatsoever, which would really give you a fun background, especially on cards that you have to fill lots of open areas on. Now, let me show you the other projects that I made using this exact same bundle of products. And as I said, this is the perfectly plaid stamp set and the coordinating pine tree punch. Now, these are offered as a bundle, which will save you 10%. Now, the projects I'm going to share with you next, I think you're really going to like. Look at these. So here's a beautiful card. There's that realistic tree again. These are actually all part of this month's card making kit. So for those of you who are in a get it done mode right now, you got to get your holiday cards done. You want to make them maybe as gifts. I've got you covered in this month's card kit, but I'd like to share them with you so that you also have ideas. So my card kit every single month is typically all cards, but I've got a special edition for you this month. You're going to get 8 projects. So you're going to get the pre-cut cardstock and the designer paper for 8 projects. So 2 of these and 2 of these. I also have 2 gift card holders. So obviously this opens up and then your gift card goes right here inside the pocket. So you've got 2 of those as well. That's a total. And you're also going to make 2 of these beautiful gold boxes. Aren't these beautiful? And you know what? Check it out. Gift card fits perfectly right down inside of here, or obviously a small gift. Now, if you want your cards to look exactly like mine, you obviously are going to need the stamp set that I shared with you tonight. Now, and if you don't want to, and you can have something at home that's going to work, that'll totally work out fine as well. Now, let me turn the camera around and let me give you a couple more details about this kit if you're interested. My monthly card making kit also includes a video with step-by-step instructions. So you're going to stamp right along with me from home. So it doesn't matter if you're brand new or you are seasoned. In addition to that, you're going to get a PDF tutorial that will give you step-by-step instructions, cutting dimensions, supplies, and multiple pictures of each of those projects. Now, I do include the pre-cut cardstock, the designer series paper, and yes, I'm reaching for it. You are going to get the gold boxes. I will include those. So you might want to get the linen thread. You might want to add a couple of the embellishments that I've used. But all the supplies for those projects can be found over on my website at lisastampstudio.com. Click on the online classes tab and you'll see card making kits. And if you click that, you'll be able to see all the details and the supplies that I've used. Now, it's very, very important that you use the exclusive kit host code because this is a special edition kit and I won't know you're entitled to it unless your online order of $50 or more includes that special host code. It's the only way that I know you're entitled to the kit, the video, the tutorial, and the pre-cut supplies, okay? Very important as well is if your order is $150 in product before shipping and tax, do not use the host code because I want you to redeem the Stampin' Rewards for yourself. But you will need to email me or contact me by the contact me button to let me know that that order was intended for that free kit for your order so that I know to provide it to you. So the kit is completely free with a $50 product order. You can order whatever you want. You do not have to order what I have here. I make it very easy and flexible for you to be able to do from home. But here's the best part. I have a very quick turnaround time this month because I want you to be able to have your kit quickly to put these cute, fast projects together. So the ordering period is only for 4 days. It's today, Wednesday, December 4th through the 7th, which is Saturday. And I have a promised mail date no later than December 10th. And I'm looking at my calendar. I believe that's next Tuesday. So it's going to be a super quick turnaround time. They will come first class mail to the same address you use for your online order. So you'll have them probably by the weekend. I would think Saturday, Monday at the very latest of the following week. And I promise you, it will not take you long to stamp and put these together because you're going to stamp right along with me in the video. I am really excited about this month's card. It's really, really cute, isn't it? All right, a couple things before we go. We are having a year-end closeout sale right now. There's some great fall products there for you on the closeout. Head over to lisastampstudio.com and click on the shop button so you can check those out. I offer exclusive and generous ordering rewards. Those are all on my website as well. If you have enjoyed tonight's video, please make sure you give it a thumbs up here on YouTube. It certainly helps a lot. Head over to my website too and sign up for my e-newsletter. I share a tutorial there each Thursday that is not shared on any of my other platforms. It's exclusive to those people that sign up. It's a no thrills newsletter. In addition to that, I would love to have you comment below. We love to interact with you. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you'll subscribe, click that bell icon so you'll receive notifications when I upload a new video, as well as when I'm live right here on YouTube. And speaking of live, I'm going to be back live with you after the holidays, looking at my calendar, Wednesday, January 8th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And I really hope that you'll be here to join me because there's a brand new MIDI catalog coming out on January 3rd. And I plan on showcasing some brand new products I know you're going to want to see. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you, Megan, for all your hard work and interaction tonight. I appreciate that you've been with me. Have a great weekend. Merry Christmas and the most wonderful Happy New Year and new decade to all of you. Bye bye.